So just recapping a bit from last week, we spoke a little bit about the first chapter. Well, we gave the whole introduction and we started the first chapter a little bit, and I'll go over that again. And now we're going to start the actual Sefer. So we're starting the actual first chapter of Sefer Tanya. So the first word is Tanya. What does that mean? We said it means it has been taught. What has it been taught? There's a Gemara in Nida that states that before a neshama, before our soul comes down to the world, he is made to swear, to promise that he will be righteous and not wicked. This is his preparation for his life mission, as we said. And then it says that even if the whole world tells you that you're righteous, you should perceive yourself as wicked. So that's a little strange. Like, what does that mean? And where does that come in? And it also contradicts what it says in Pirkei Avot, that one should not consider himself wicked. We should never consider ourselves bad. Why not? Because it causes us to feel depressed and down and bad about ourselves, and then we can't serve Hashem with simcha. So that's a contradiction, saying that we should see ourselves as bad, that even if everyone else tells us we're good, we should see ourselves as bad. And we're not going to get to these answers for a while. It's just kind of the introduction, and then we're going to get back to it later on. However, it mentions also that we should never, over-exaggerate how good we are and think we, and never judge ourselves. Once in a while, we need that cheshbon hanefesh. We need that self-judgment to keep us in check and to keep us in line, but not as a general rule. Okay, so that is what we discussed last week. Now, in order to understand all of this, we have to define what righteous and what wicked means. What does a tzaddik mean, and what does a rasha mean? So there's a Gemara. If you're following along, as I mentioned last week, the Sefaria app, or in any book of the Tanya, we're now up to the words, Acha inyan, okay? However, the matter will be understood, okay? We're now trying to understand what a rasha and a tzaddik is. So it brings a different Gemara, which says that there are 5 distinct types of people, okay? There's the righteous that prospers, the righteous that suffers, the wicked that prospers, the wicked that suffers, and a benoni, okay? It mentions this type called a benoni, which means in between. Now, this is quite a famous Gemara that we often understand as, like, why do good things happen, bad things happen to good people? Like a good person, that something good happens to them, a good person that suffers. But he is giving a different explanation here, okay? He's calling it, instead of it saying, why does good happen to a person, he's saying good inside him. So when it says a tzaddik sheyesh bo tov, a tzaddik that has good, it's talking about good inside of him. So that means that he's a righteous person. So a tzaddik v'tovlo means that he's good and he only has good inside of him. A tzaddik v'ralo means he's a tzaddik, he's righteous, but he has a little bit of bad in him. However, his good is his bad is subservient to the good. So he's overtaken by the good and therefore still considered righteous. Okay? And then the same with a wicked person. A wicked person can be completely wicked or can have some good in him, but because that good is subservient to the bad, he is still defined as wicked. So the way that the Baal Tanya describes a tzaddik is as someone who his good inclination rules. He never gives in to the bad inclination. He is always good, okay? Even if he has a little bit of bad inside of him, he never gives into that bad. Whereas a Benoni, both inclinations do have a say. And we're going to get into that more, okay? Now, in the Gemara, when it says that Rava brings up the concept of a Benoni, he says that I'm an example of an in-betweener. I'm a Benoni. And Abaya was shocked. He was like, well, if you're a Benoni, then he uses the word, he says, you make it impossible for anyone to live. The reason he uses those words is because it says that someone who's a Rasha is considered dead. So he's like, we consider dead because if you're Benoni, we all for sure Rasha'im. So now the Tanya is going to discuss, what does that mean? Like, why would he call himself a Benoni? Why it says that it's known that he learned all the time. He never stopped learning Torah. Like, why did he not describe himself as a tzaddik? Now it brings another quote that says that Hashem created righteous men and wicked men, and it's preordained whether a man will be righteous or wicked. So now this is also really confusing. Like, it seems that everything is, could be preordained, but not what we're going to choose to do with our life. That seems to be in our hands. So that's another confusing point, which hopefully we will get answered. Okay. So in order to answer all those questions, he says we need to understand. He says the words "v'gam lehevin." Okay, when he's up to this point, he says we have to understand what the definition of a Benoni is. What is the definition of this in-betweener? Okay, according to the Rambam, we would think that a Benoni is someone who has half good and half bad. He does mitzvahs, he does sins, he's kind of in between. But then it can't be, because of Rava, as we just said, could never have described himself as that. Because he was learning Torah all day. It says to the point that the angel of death had no power over him. And besides for that, it's also the term tzaddik in Russia is also used to describe when someone sins. Like when someone sins, it says he's wicked. And then as soon as he does teshuvah, then he's called a tzaddik. So like at what point is he a Benoni? Like either or, like what is he? If someone is a Rasha, I mean, if a Benoni would be someone who would sin some of the time, he would be called a Rasha, because a Rasha is someone who sins. So basically, from this whole discussion, what we're seeing is that the type of person called a Benoni, an in-betweener, which is actually who the Tanya was written for. He says that we actually have to strive to be this Benoni, and it's actually a very high level. It's not what we think. It's not this kind of like half-half. It's actually someone who doesn't sin at all either. But for our intents and purposes, it's basically in a practical way means the same as a tzaddik. Someone who doesn't ever sin. And he says that it is possible to reach that. And I think when it means doesn't ever sin, it means someone who, if he stumbles, he will then do teshuvah for it. He's not someone who lives in sin. And that is what the Sefer Tanya is going to teach us, is how to actually strive to be a person who lives in that kind of way, where we are without sin, where we are doing the right thing and striving to do the right thing. And then if we do stumble, we correct that. So he actually calls it the Sefer Beinonim, the book for in-betweeners, to teach us how to reach this very high level. It's a clearly very unique kind of a person. But he uses the words, Kikarav elecha davar hazeh. Don't think that it's out of reach. Kikarav elecha, it's close to you, it's within reach. It's possible for every person to achieve even this very high and lofty level. Okay. Then there's a discussion where when it uses the words v'ha amrin ba'alman. It uses there's a discussion saying when there's definitely a discussion of someone who's called a tzaddik is someone who has majority good deeds, right? We speak about this like when in Tishrei, when Hashem's weighing up the good and the bad, it says it's the book of the righteous, the book of the evil. Someone who has more good deeds is called righteous. Someone who's more bad deeds is called evil. So he says, don't get confused about this. This is just a borrowed term of a tzaddik and rasha used within judgment, meaning in that judgment, they use the word tzaddik and rasha, but it's not the definition of what a tzaddik and a rasha is. It's a figurative use of the term in regard to reward, in regard to reward and punishment. It means righteous in judgment. It doesn't mean righteous by definition. It means he was a tzaddik. He passed the judgment. But it's okay. But now he's going to discuss what the true definition is. Okay. He says concerning the true definition and quality of distinct levels and ranks, okay, of righteous, intermediate. Our sages have remarked that righteous people, tzaddikim, are motivated solely by their good nature. Like we said, they are not ruled by their evil inclination at all, okay? And that's what David HaMelech said when he said, my heart is void within me. Void of any evil. There was no evil inside of him. He would never follow the Yetzer. It was only Yetzer Tov. That is their only operating system. Their only operating system is good. But someone who doesn't have that level, even if he's righteous in judgment, so he has more mitzvahs, but he's still not called a tzaddik, okay, by definition. He also says here that it's very rare and unique to find a true tzaddik, someone who's only guided by the impulse to do good. He said so few that Hashem planted them in every generation. Why? Because it says that without tzaddikim, without pure righteous people, the world would cease to exist. Okay, it says tzaddik yesod olam. The tzaddik is the foundation of the world. So Hashem actually plants tzaddikim in each generation. Okay, so that is all about the definition and the theory, and now he's going to get into a more practical, personal application to us. Okay, so we're up to the words where it says ach biur, the explanation. Okay, al pi ma shekatuv Rav Chaim Vital. So now he brings a Rav Chaim Vital, who was a great Kabbalist, and he wrote in the Shar HaKadusha as follows, okay? In his book, he wrote as follows. He said that, now this is very crucial. This is like a lot of what Tanya is based on, okay? It says that every Jew has two souls. And once you understand this, you really start understanding how you work more, and it's very, very useful to know. So it says that we actually have two souls, two completely different operating systems, okay? One originates in the klippa. What is the klippa? The klippa, or the sitra achra, okay, the klippa means a shell. Sitra achra means the other side. These are terms used for the evil side, but the Torah doesn't like to use harsh language, so it refers to it in like klippa, meaning that the outer shell of a fruit, or the husk, the other side, the side that's not holy. Okay, so one of our souls, our animal soul, which we're going to get into more, actually originates in this klippa. It comes from the other side. It's clothed in the blood of a human being. It's in our body. It gives us life. It's our life force. And in there stems evil characteristics. Okay, that's where the evil inclination stems from, and it stems from four basic elements. Okay, the four elements that we all know about: fire, water, air, and earth. Okay, so what are these, some of these characteristics? So fire would be, anger and pride. Water is lust, pleasure. It says like water flows and kind of fills any container. It's always just like going for, for pleasure. Air is, lightness, frivolousness, scoffing, boasting, idle talk. And earth is that downward pull. It's the sloth, the depression, the heaviness, sadness. Now, what's interesting is also that the positive metals, our good characteristics, are also stemmed from the soul. Okay, you would think that the good would all come from the other soul, but he says no. He says just like he says fire. He doesn't give the exact examples, but let's say fire is passion, excitement. So the fact that a Jew is the son of, or daughter of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov means that we inherently have good characteristics as well in our genes. He says such as compassion. It says that Jews are compassionate, kindness. And, how's it possible that it could be rooted in this soul? The reason he gives, which is very interesting, is that he says that holiness always comes from work and effort. So if something is natural to us, if something was born, that's now we're going back to that Gemara. It says Hashem decides what we're born with. If we're born with certain nature and we have that compassion and kindness within us, it's nature. It's not actually considered holy. It's just what we're born with. But he does say that the reason that this animal soul, which is, from the side of evil, from the Sitra Achra, the reason that it can contain good is because that it's not from the entirely evil klippa, meaning there are apparently 3 evil klippot, which I think he's going to get to. And then there's something called the klippat noga. Okay, noga means light, and it says that this klippa originates from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The tree of knowledge of good and evil is where everything got kind of mixed up, where good and bad existed together. So this klippa is actually from there. So it's not we don't come from the most evil Sitra Achra. We come from a kind of more neutral place called the Klippat Noga, the souls of a Jew specifically. The souls of the nations of the world, of everyone besides Jews, come from the regular 3 evil Klippot. In fact, it says that any good that non-Jewish people do is not as pure as what as Jews, as what we do good. It says that there's always some self-interest involved. So that is actually now already the end of the first chapter. So as we said, there are different sections in the Tanya, and we in part 1 called Likutei Amaraim. And that was, as you see, they are pretty short. That was already the whole of the first chapter. So now we're going to start the second chapter, okay? And now it's going to talk about our other soul. So that was the first soul. And now it says, B'nefesh hashenit b'Yisrael, okay? What is this second soul of a Jew? Okay. Now, this chapter speaks about quite lofty concepts. It's a little bit hard to grasp as it is. I'm sure you could already see it was very lofty, but hopefully as we get into it, it will become clearer. And it describes the descent of the soul from up high into this world, okay? So it says that the second type of soul that we have, he uses the words, he chelek eloka mima'al mamish. Okay, we often use this expression, chelek eloka mima'al. It's an actual part of Hashem. And he says mamash, like truly, really. We are truly have this part of Hashem within us. And it says that Hashem blew from within him. It says that blowing is a deeper expression than talking because it comes from deep within someone. So Hashem went deep within him and he blew within us part of himself, part of his essence, who he is. Then it's talking about, then it says that it came from thought. Okay, it uses this metaphor where it says that like just like thought is considered our highest expression, right? We've got thought, which is very lofty. We've got speech, which is already filtering the thought down. So, you know, what you're thinking cannot be truly expressed with speech. It's already watered down. And then it goes into action, which is even lower because it cannot truly express the, you know, the intent or the thoughts behind it. So it uses that metaphor of thought, and it says it's as if we came from Hashem's thought, which is from Hashem's highest element. It says that the children of Israel are called the firstborn of Hashem, his children, okay? We are called these very elevated concepts. He wants to instill in us how lofty the Jewish soul is. It says that a child is derived from his father's mind, whatever that means. Maybe it means he needs to have intention when he's creating a child. The father, when he comes to that point, it actually comes from thought, and so too Nishmat Yisrael. Every Jew is derived from Hashem's thought and wisdom. Okay, when it says, when it uses the word wisdom, chachma, we described last week that there are different spirit, right? That Hashem has different characteristics, different midot. And chachma is the first one, chachma, bina, and das. Now he says it's important to make a differentiation. When we say chachma of a person, it's very different to chachma of Hashem. And why is that? Because the wisdom of a person is separate to who he is. There's like a person, his essence, and then he's got his wisdom, what is contained inside his mind. But for Hashem, the wisdom is Hashem. They are one. It says he is the knowledge and he is the knower. Hashem cannot be separated. He is one. So and the reason for that also is that it says that Hashem cannot learn new things. He knows everything. So for us, the wisdom is constantly changing. We have us, who we are, and then we have wisdom, which we're acquiring. But he already knows everything, so it's a part of him. As it is written, it says, can you find God by searching? For my thoughts are not your thoughts. We cannot understand Hashem through comparing his wisdom to what man's wisdom is. Okay, so this is where we're going to stop for today. The rest of chapter 2 goes more into this. It's a little bit lofty, but hopefully as we continue and it will become clearer, we will get into more practical applications of what it means when we understand how we are made up, when we understand how our soul works. As we said last week, the whole of Sefer Tanya was written to give people clarity meaning when people would come to him with questions, that is what created this book. So it's all based on people's questions of how to serve Hashem, and how do I work, and what does this mean? And as he's setting down these foundations of these definitions, he's going to then take us deeper into understanding how we can strive to be a better person, to be this rank called a Beinoni, to understand how our souls work and function, and basically to navigate life. This is a book of how to navigate living as a Jew, and living to be better people. So please God, we will continue with this journey, and we'll see where it takes us. I'm looking forward to seeing you all next time. Thank you.